So, Vladimir, thank you very much for accepting our invitation for you to be on the 3CL podcast. We have a tradition where we ask people who come to the podcast a very simple but barbed question in a way. So, Vladimir Šucha, who are you?
Yeah, very interesting question. Well, I see myself as a connector of dots. So I think other word would be innovator, but not innovator of new technologies, but more innovator of new views on things which are around us. So I'm always quite good in connecting the dots and seeing things which are emerging.
I think it's a really interesting one actually, because I once used the same analogy in terms of what I've done all my life, really, because as you know, I got into academia quite late in my life, but most of the work I've been doing was policy work and strategy work initially for technology companies and then for governments in a way. And I think the ability to join dots, particularly in strange times like the ones we're living in, is really important. And I think in the first conversation we had, it was trying to untangle some of these strange times. And I think also the sense of urgency that we both kind of see as the time that we're looking at. And the strange times, I think, are clearly related to Gen AI and the mass adoption of AI by ordinary citizens. So I think my first question to you is, how do you see this moment that we are living in now, as we are in, almost like mid 2025, and with Gen AI having become part of our vernacular in a way?
I see it as a crossroad. I think that we are in very important crossroad of humanity, and it's very important, and it depends on us actually what will happen in following few years. So we have that's my estimate, the window of 3 to 5 years, maybe less, to in a way shape up the future of society, future of Europe, if we are talking about Europe, as the democratic value-based region or society, because I think that what we are facing is, I would say, fundamental paradigmatic change, not only in technology, but obviously technology already penetrated into our minds, into humans. It's shaping what we think, not only what we do or how we think, but also what we think, and that never happened in thousands and thousands of years of human history. Even the most potent and powerful nuclear energy is not shaping our mind. So it's threatening. Yes, we can feel fearful or whatever, but it's if the bomb is sitting next to us and it's not exploding, it's not shaping our mind. But artificial intelligence, everything what is in our smartphone is shaping our minds. It's penetrating, is in a way influencing our emotions. And this is very important. It's happening in actually past maybe 10, 15 years, slowly, silently. But now we are at the crossroad, because if we are now facing the potentially extremely powerful general artificial intelligence, and that can really reshape the future. And if we put now these guardrails, if we somehow design the limits, then I think that we can have a sort of coexistence and cooperation with artificial intelligence. If not, we may face difficulties.
I think this issue of guardrails is something that we've been discussing in a way with AI professors. And one of the most alarming things I heard was that at the moment, there are no real guardrails. In other words, that there's a semblance of guardrails, but we seem to be in the same situation that we were in the early days of social media. In other words, social media platforms, that a lot of trust was placed on these platforms to do the right thing. And now I think we know that that's not what happened. And what I'm also finding is that there's some very deep beliefs at the moment in terms of, this thing being good for us or bad for us. I think is something that we need to dive into a bit. I mean, with our approach of looking at media, technology, and education as being forces that potentially can take us out of a crisis, or potentially are going to make things worse. I mean, how can you see this moment from where you're sitting at the moment as somebody who's been involved in policy, somebody who's close to the EU, somebody who teaches in a way, what can we do, I think, at this moment before we dive into some of these other issues we've been talking about?
Mm. There are plenty of things we can do as individuals, as communities, as a society. There are plenty of things which should be done also by governments, including European government. And well, that's the plethora of things. Just let's refer to just few. So you mentioned, and I mentioned, and you then echo the guardrails. So for putting rightly the guardrails or some limits, we need to understand what are the issues of alignment and safety. And we are just ridiculously paying almost nothing to the research of safety. If you compare the roughly 50 billion a year to a global investment in AI development, it is roughly 50 million a year, which is invested in safety research. So I think that this is one urgent thing. Then we really have to make the measures to model and understand the long-term impact of artificial intelligence exposure. And I can make the link to environmental protection. And we now know how harmful are endocrine disruptors, even though they are in very low levels present in our environment. Now we are discovering the issues of microplastics and nanoplastics, how harmful they are. So we discovered the harmfulness of lead, the low levels of lead, low levels of particulate matter in the air, killing hundreds of thousands of people. And this is happening with artificial intelligence. We have the AI Act, and AI Act is talking about the different levels of risks. So we have high risk, but even if we have something which is low risk, and we know it from environmental exposure, it is low risk, but for the very long period of time. So there is significant harm which is made by this, and this is what we are harnessing through the social media exposure over past 15 years. With the explosion of different social media platforms. So it's low risk, and obviously, if you are on a social media for maybe 1 hour, nothing is happening. If you are for 3 hours, maybe nothing is happening. But if you are for 3 hours, for 3 years, and something is definitely happening, and we just see the symptoms. But we do not understand the mechanism. We do not understand how it is how it is actually happening. So this is what we need to investigate, and I think that we need to have very urgently. Also the impact assessment methodologies of this long-term impact on societies and individuals and human agency. So that's one thing. Another important element is invest in AI because the European Union is actually investing very little. I was referring to these huge numbers. So you remember, you may imagine that if I remember correctly, US invested 300 billions in AI in past 10 years. I think that that overall cumulative number for European Union is around 40 billions. So which is difficult to compare. And then if we do not do this, so then we may have we may have a problem. So if we don't invest significantly in this respect. So then and we need to invest obviously to human capital, to people who are able to work on AI. And we need to also develop something because you have the regulatory element, which is the issue of governments and European Union institutions. But you have also many things which cannot be regulated. And this is related to human agency, to this low risk impact. And that we need, like with the diet or environmental exposure, we need to raise awareness that we know that smoking is not good. But okay, we cannot ban totally the smoking if you want to smoke in your house, your own house. But at least you are aware. But we are all using different kinds of AI, but we are not aware that this is having the cumulative harmful impact in the long term. So I think that this awareness is also the responsibility of different levels, not only governments, different communities, regions, educational institutions, but also ourselves. So we need to start digging and learning and being aware.
I'm particularly interested in the issue of human agency. And because I'm seeing human agency on one side, and we need to discuss that because I know you're putting a lot of attention to that. And I'm seeing it as something which we don't understand or is poo-pooed. And I think on the other side, my concern with the whole governance issue, with the regulation issue, is that if we look at the history of what happened with social media platforms, fines haven't exactly solved the problem. I think the investment that you've rightly highlighted, that in Europe, we're not just late, we are dependent on AI technology coming from the US primarily. And maybe we can pretend that we think what China is doing. So we're late. I think the possibility that all of this stuff can become adversarial, which would have been unthought of, I guess, and it's also because some of the work I did with the OSCE that I've seen attempts at regulating traditional platforms coming from Silicon Valley as having failed miserably. So I think we should focus on human agency as to what you mean by it. Whether you're talking about human agency in the home, whether you were talking about human agency in other places, is it in the classrooms? Because like you, I'm finding that in my case, I'm teaching 21-year-olds at the moment, and it's either too late, and they're telling me it's too late, and they're all struggling to understand. And this is where, again, we can also tunnel to our mutual connection in terms of education. What's the education system going to be? What does and new visions of education going to be vis-a-vis this aspiration to have human agency guide us to doing the right thing with what is obviously both an opportunity and a threat. At the moment, we're all focusing on the opportunity, or many people are. Very few people are looking at the threat. And it seems to me that the hope is that if we have tight legislation and fines, it's going to work. My view, it didn't work with social media platforms. Why should it work with the various open AIs and DeepSeeks and Googles and the rest? So back to human agency, maybe. Let's discuss that a bit, I think. Why your deep focus on human agency in terms of rapidly advancing AI, and then we'll get into some other related issues.
Well, in my view, it is there are two pillars of functioning democracy. These are functional democratic institutions like governments, parliaments, different agencies, etc. And they are people with the agency, with the capacity to decide freely and take actions. So, and I think that if you have technology which is reshaping your capacity to decide and is manipulating your decision, so then we cannot have a real democracy if the democratic elections where you are supposed to decide on your own freely, if your mind in your emotions, and we know how important emotions are in the decision making of humans, if your emotions are manipulated, if you are somehow closed up in the bubble, information bubble, if you are exposed to all these post-truth phenomena, then I don't think that we have agency and we have the free elections as we are supposed to have free elections. And then there are studies of showing how the artificial artificial issues are created by artificial intelligence, and then you are artificially changing in a way the narratives and emotions and sentiments of people, and then you have sentimental analysis of the population, which is totally artificial because you create through the social media the false narratives and issues. So that's something which is absolutely crucial, and as you said, there are different factors. And for me, and what I'm trying to develop right now is the concept of mental resilience, because I think that obviously we can regulate, we should regulate, we should put different safety and alignment mechanisms into our policies. We need to better understand the impact, but we have to work on our own as individuals as well. As I said, nobody can regulate your fitness practices, and if you don't do the physical exercises, your muscles are atrophying. And this is what we have, what we are witnessing. There is a skills atrophy. There is a de-skilling and there is a skill atrophy, and this is a sort of vicious cycle which is combined and influencing what we do, what we are capable of doing, and we have to stop it. Obviously, we are losing some skills and we don't need them as we did in the past centuries. But there are some human skills as a collaboration, empathy, critical thinking. And this is in a way part of the human agency. And if you are losing this, so then we are losing extremely important parts of our human, I would say, features or characteristics and parts of the human agency. So then then we are losing also the human agency. So I think that this is the angle I'm taking, and I'm developing the concept of human agents, this mental resilience, how we can actually fitness our mind, prepare our mind to resist, adapt, and there are individuals which are playing the role, but as you rightly mentioned, also communities are playing the role, and these communities are family, religious groups, educational institutions, educational communities, but also workplace communities, as well as civil society communities. And all these are very important. So I think that we really need to um, resuscitate our communities, and I'm not talking about virtual communities. I'm talking mostly about physical communities. So then we have to have this kind of physical contact, because um, we have tons of research showing that there is the epidemic of loneliness, in spite of the fact that we have never been so hyper connected as we are today, and still people are feeling lonely, and this is because we do not have contacts which are the genuine human contacts, but we have all these virtual contacts which are not fulfilling those needs.
There's a lot to unpack there. Okay, so let me tell you some things which struck me, which I really like the analogy of it's almost like the physical stuff you need to do, that almost need to get your brain to work in a different way. It's almost like the analogy is, I mean, with me teaching Gen Z and millennials, I mean, there's an obsession with going to the gym to take care of your body, but I don't know what you're going to do to take care of your mind to deal with all of this stuff. I think it's really interesting. The other analogy I can think of is when you're talking about let's go back to real communities, which, you know, as we all know now, a typical community, especially with young people, is six people lined up, not necessarily talking to each other, but staring at the screens. But it's not just young people. So it's almost like we've taken an analogy of being, I don't know, on the London Tube, and everybody's looking at something. We've gone from newspapers to looking at screens, nobody talking to each other. And it's almost reminded me of, like, and I'm sure like the Robert Putnam bowling alone analogy at the beginning of the whole social media stuff, when his fear was and remains actually that we don't go to the bowling alley anymore with people, and now it's this other extreme of being alone together in a way. I'm just again wondering, looking at the idea of human agency, but also within loneliness, mental health, especially amongst young people, how much of this is going to exacerbate or not exacerbate because of AI? Because I think in the first conversation you and I had, I mean, we all know that Zuckerberg has said that most American teens only have three friends really, and Meta is going to help by providing you soon with your new friend. So you've gone from the analogy of, her in the film to someone you can speak to. I tried this analogy in my last lecture to a set of students I was teaching. And they were all nodding vigorously in a way, in terms of they all said that it definitely has an impact on their mental health. It definitely has an impact in terms of feeling alone. So I'm just wondering how we can prepare the next generation to develop this resilience, this emotional, cognitive, and in a way ethical resilience in this world saturated almost with these what can we call them, synthetic relationships, curated realities. Because it's one side, it's I think this is what I'm struggling with as somebody who's been in interdisciplinary education for the last, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, but came from industry. And my frustration where academia was, is, and remains, we can't do things quickly enough. And we have an immediate problem which is going to get worse within the next 3 years. What is it that we can do? Those of us who have links with the Commission, maybe weak or strong. Those of us who have links with governments, weak or strong, and are still talking to young people. It's a barbed question, but it's really something I'm struggling with at the moment, at this stage in my life, because like you, I think we have an emergency.
No, absolutely, we have emergency. Well, I think that apart from all those issues I mentioned as a part of regulation, this is this awareness raising. I wouldn't call it media literacy because I think that this is a little bit the connotation is quite old-fashioned, because we have been working on media literacy without huge success for 15 years or more. But I think that we need to understand this element of mental resilience and community development, and help with policy measures. So I think that we can have. I can imagine the council recommendations on boosting the mental resilience, which will then maybe inspire different regional, national authorities responsible for pre-primary education, primary education, secondary education, that they include some elements, because this is not expensive. It does not cost, so you are not building new schools. You are not bringing new equipment. You are just bringing humanity into education, which we somehow forgot with this notion of the second industrial revolution, which is still very very much present in our education, that we really need to pump certain standardized level of knowledge into minds of our people, and that they are able to work in the industry and economy and do some tasks. I think that this is very much still present in education systems, and maybe we should go back and to bring some humanity, some social interactions, and I think that would be the least expensive. It costs nothing, but it's sometimes difficult because we don't have this tendency of, because you cannot in the regular formal education, you cannot boost the empathy, and this is what we need to do. So you need to create the real connections between kids, and they need to experience also intergenerational relations, and this is easy and difficult at the same time, because it's not written in this formal curricula. This is not how the kids and teachers and headmasters are evaluated, but this can be somehow influenced, and we can do it quickly, because just to include some social work, even at the level of primary school or secondary school, the going and visiting the lonely elderly people or handicapped people. This all is extremely helpful for them, definitely, but for those who are doing it, a little bit of this compassion, and then we are building our self sense, which we are losing. So I think that these things, and I think that can be inspired through different practices, and it's quite easy without compromising the authority of different national, regional, or local institutions responsible for education. And then on communities, I think that we should be maybe investing in infrastructure. We should be having eventually the impact assessment of different investments, maybe also from European funds, on how this investment is helping or not helping the human connectivity. I mean, physical connectivity. I'm not talking about internet connectivity. And is it neutral, harmful, or positive? And I think that this is another light measure where we can better understand that if we do it rightly, that we can help. Because I'm now based in Italy, and I read a study recently how the Italian cafes are in decline. How many cafes were closed down, and it's I don't remember exactly the number percentage, but it was mind blowing. Sort of, I don't know whether this was 1/3 of cafes were closed. And are not functioning. So this shows that even in the society where the drinking coffee is important part of the social life, this is in decline. So then, well, I think that drinking coffee with someone is already extremely important social phenomena, and creating the bonds, and talking, and etc. So I think that we need to be, I would say, a little bit more strategic in creating these kind of infrastructures. Also, the youth groups. I think that we really need to bring, because we were a bit obsessed with e-connectivity, e-twinning, and e-whatever. I would say we should be more now doing p-twinning, which is physical, and because this is we have enough e, and we need to have a little bit more of that p. That this real connectivity, which is extremely useful and helpful in boosting resilience.
Again, there's a lot to unpack, and it's kind of I'm smiling through all of this because we're reaching very similar conclusions. And I'll give you some analogies related to this, and maybe potential solutions, and maybe potential way forward. So let me start with, again, a little story. I mean, I had a conversation with the Minister for Education in my country in a very public forum about 4 weeks ago. And government is trying to understand what interdisciplinary education is all about. And as I said, education is still set on a one-size-fits-all system in a way, where people are looking at things in silos. And I said, we are risking losing basic literacies, the ability to speak, to write, to communicate ideas. And as you're rightly saying, yeah, just young people hanging around, doing what young people do, talking to each other, having fun. Okay, I have a sociologist professor friend of mine who occasionally gets people out of the lecture hall and actually takes them to a field somewhere so they can talk. This is something which we've forgotten about because of the whole E thing. I also take a point about media literacies, and I'm somebody who's teaching a course called Digital Literacies for Creatives and Communicators, as long as I continue to teach at university. And I've been repivoting from that concept to the whole idea of information. What can you trust? What can't you trust? As a way of tunneling into some of these big problems that we're identifying. My view is that if we manage, I'm saying we the collective of doers, strategists, academics, philosophers, computer scientists, manage to get around this idea of these hubs, what we're calling them, digital citizenship hubs. And these are things that I've actually started up very quietly with one of your colleagues, as you know, with Nina Shengalia, but also some of the work we've been doing in Europe, and specifically at the request of young people, this multi-generational aspect that you actually spoke about. What we've had conferences here on young people and information disorders, where at the end of it, people respond. They said, next time we do this, we run this. Young people run this, and you guys come and help watch, do something to spark it. I think if we focus on pilots, case studies, sandboxes, in other words, if something works in Slovakia, it might work in Malta, it might work in somewhere else. Maybe it might not work in Finland in terms of culturally, or in Sweden, because they have different, but there are the same issues being addressed at the moment in terms of these crimes that we're talking about. I think in terms of the EU, we have to find funding for some of these projects, but the idea of pilots, so whether we're going to go back to the old Horizon approach and get 15 organizations, but alas, most of these inevitably end up being universities, okay? And there are fewer kind of people who are actually on the ground. I think that's one way we may look at it. And I think in terms of this infrastructure that you're talking about, there's been an obsession, I think, in the past. I don't know if it's happened in your country. You remember the old one tablet per child? You didn't have technology. Now we'll give you a tablet. Now life is much better, and in that case, yeah, life is much better. That hasn't really worked. So I'm just really trying to figure out at the moment. I want to tunnel a bit into this whole information disorder I'm talking about now, as to how we can address it. I mean, as you know, we've been working on manifestos for young people to actually raise their voice and looking at, the media. What does it mean? It still means stories. So I can understand your media literacy that may have failed. Okay. Information disorders, what do we mean? Because it's very different making mistakes online, the misinformation, but the disinformation stuff and the malinformation stuff, that's totally different. But then, and I think this is where you and I have common pathways, this understanding human behavior as it is now, accepting that we have a problem, accepting that we are all dealing with young people Gen Z particularly, who are struggling to articulate ideas sometimes, but also because of fear of being watched, because of the surveillance society they have around them. And now AI is happening. It's almost like they're saying, well, this is really great, I can use it. And the same they're saying, how much of my data is being used by whatever it is we're using? And I think none of us really know. So it's just a long observation, I guess, in terms of what can we do with information, with manipulation, and maybe even democracy, as they, with young people starting to navigate these environments. How can we bring this discourse to something called democracy, which at the moment is also struggling with, the rise of both the right wing in certain administrations, but also what I keep on saying is potentially adversarial US technology that we are using and will increasingly use. And I know there's no ready answer, Vladimir, so I'm unleashing a lot on you.
Yeah, obviously there is not one single bullet, so it's very complex, and AI already penetrated to all activities of the society and humans. So I think that's why there is not one solution. If it would stay contained in IT sector, yeah, but now it's everywhere. Everybody is having artificial intelligence in their smartphones and tablets everywhere. So I think that's very, very important. So I think there is a geopolitical and strategic dimension, as you mentioned. I think that we have to wake up to this and to understand that maybe in a few years we will have a bipolar world of two different poles of AI or AI driven rules. One which is mostly corporations driven coming from US, and one which is mostly state driven from China. And then we have to ask ourselves already now the question where we are in Europe. Are we corporation driven? Are we state driven? Or are we values driven or democratic values driven? And I think this is this is in my view extremely urgent question we need to ask ourselves. And if we say yes, Europe is defined by its values, democracy, human agency, freedom, then we have to act. Because if we do not act, so it's like talking about the peace in Ukraine by pushing Ukraine to surrender. So this is an opening the gate to aggressor. And I think that this is a fundamental question we have to ask and answer. And if we answer yes, we want democracy, values, human agency, and freedom, then we have to act very quickly because we don't have that much time. And I think that is absolutely crucial. And then the rest is obviously following. We have to do it. We have to do the regulatory part. We have to do, I would say, advisory part, but we also need to do this awareness raising part because everybody needs to contribute and do his or her own part, because I think that we need to have also responsibility for ourselves. So I think that needs to be done.
It's almost like we need some sort of, if not the global alliance, but a European alliance of unlikely actors, I suspect.
Yeah, should be global alliance, because I think there are countries in the globe outside Europe which are ready to work on this. Take Canada, obviously all countries beyond the EU in Europe, or many countries, but also maybe to a certain extent South Korea, Japan, Australia, maybe India. Well, that is a quite significant part, but I think that EU should be at the forefront of
So
this.
you really see the EU as being like taking a lead on this ethical AI from a global perspective. I mean, despite like the geopolitical tensions that we have
Yeah, I think that this is in a way I see this as a distraction. If you're talking about tariffs, if you're talking about defense, it's to certain extent distraction from this fundamental development which we are facing right now. And I think that we should obviously these are important elements. We have to preserve economy in the short term. We have to build up deterrence capacity in but actually investing in AI is maybe all three because it as I said penetrated everywhere. So it's boosting economy, strengthening the economy, but it's also boosting defense capacity and at the same time building up the AI capacity as it is. So I think that that is not a bad uh, focus and investment.
Um, I just want to focus briefly on the idea of, you know, communities. I want to go back to communities slightly, and the EU, because I don't see them as, I mean, my reading is that what you are seeing as communities are smaller communities, like from the families to networks. And I'm just wondering if we want to take the EU to take the lead, how this is going to happen within the, I think, kind of the 3 to 5 year urgency intervention time frame that you're talking about. I think a lot of your work right now. I mean, what do you think are the most urgent interventions that should happen now? Who should be doing them? And I'm using the collective we now. How can we make this happen in our role as, educators, strategists, parents?
I think there are things which needs to be done quite urgently at all levels. As I said, we need to have a certain steps done at pan-European level, whoever is doing it. But I think that the best position right now for the urgency are the European institutions. So I think that we need to have a collective significant increase of investments. And we need to build up these alliances, the democratic alliances. We need to agree on common investment in developing AGI, artificial general intelligence. So I think that we have done this in fusion. We have Cadarache, the experimental fusion reactor. We have CERN in Switzerland, fantastic infrastructure. We have done this in the past. We can do it now. And then we have to think about also the regulation. What kind of smart regulation we should be doing, and it's not about deregulating; it's about smart regulating. So we need to understand, and we need to establish also this impact assessment and invest significantly more in safety and alignment research. So that is at the big level. It can be done with the combination with the national levels in countries having the potential. And then we need to rethink and refocus also the budgetary lines of different programs, whether European national programs, to support youth, because I think that the most vulnerable part of the society are the young people right now. And all activities which are being supported by Erasmus are very good. These youth activities, local activities, and that can be done at all levels: European, national, local, regional, whatever. And I think this is very important. At the same time, I think that there needs to be done the collective thinking of experts from all countries in Europe having something to do or investing their mental intellectual capacity in all aspects of digital education. And then I'm not talking about giving more tablets to individuals, but understanding, all these aspects of mental resilience and new skills which we need to boost. And I think that because not everybody has this capacity. Not everybody is aware. So I think there is a critical mass of people at the EU level, and I think that can lead into recommendations how to influence the curriculum, how to alter the curriculum, what are the methodology which have been tested and which are working. And I think that this kind of repository of good practices and advice should be available for those who are ready to do it, who have the feeling that something is happening, but they don't know what to do. And I think that's another. And then obviously this general awareness raising, which needs to be there as well for each and everyone who wants to invest in his or her own resilience.
In a way, I want to conclude with where you started, which was this ability to join dots. No, I mean, I would love, and I've been meaning to do this for a long time, if only we can get funding and collectively do it. I would love to set up this network of with the 100, 150 people from very different disciplines who understand this issue, because all of these people have their own personal proprietary networks or institutional networks. And I think if we base it on the issue of the hub concepts and this collective thinking that you're talking about, I mean, there's no doubt about the mental health issues and the loneliness issues. I mean, I just tried it now as a bit of a pilot with my students when I told them, deliver your own manifestos. Tell me what it is. Tell me what's important. And some people just created manifestos related to that, feeling alone, not knowing how to navigate this. I really think it's a bit of a call to action. So my hope, I guess, is that we get around the barriers of geopolitics, even within Europe. I think I would stick to my premise that, and based on experience, especially when we're doing other types of work, like using new technologies for education purposes, that you can try and do something radically in one place and then get another place to adopt it or hybridize it, and then people get encouraged and not just write about it, but film it. I really like the idea of this is about young people, I think. And so it should not be about us, but we need to find some way, us the elders, of facilitating these people who are saying we're struggling. And at the same time, telling people like me, it's not us who are the real problem. Wait for Generation Alpha to turn up. They're going to have difficulty speaking, writing, because they've got the screen and they think AGI is going to help them, or they won't even know it's AGI. We're going to, well, I think we can conclude on this. I've been to many conferences like you have. And in our case, when we organize something, no matter how big or small, we film everything, because sometimes the real value is an aside what somebody says, which is forgotten. And in our case, what we normally do is we film everything and then get some young people to actually hear it as opposed to us and see what's important for them. And that's the way we crafted the manifestos that we've done till now. So I mean, I would really love it if you could join us. We're going to hold a little summit in Malta in November around young people. But I think in between, I think we because of the sense of time, and that's what keeps on worrying me. Still being within a university, and I'm seeing a new study in it has about 18 months within which it needs to be approved by other people, right? And I agree, I understand all of the ethics issues and related to we're chasing a moving target. I think people like us need to find some way of getting the attention of the EU and those decision makers that they also need to facilitate some of these quick action solutions that can encourage other people to realize A, there is a problem, and B, something can be done about it, but at very different levels. And I think starting with mapping with these 100 people, 200 people might be, and it's not just a case of using LinkedIn. I think it's a deeper dive. That would be my suggestion. I don't know if you've got anything else, Vladimir. I'm grateful for your time, and I'm just hoping that we really can start this collective of, whether we call it digital citizenship hubs, whether we call it, just get something done soon. I think it's important.
No, absolutely. I see also this idea of digital citizens hubs as a part of the future policy because we haven't been talking about the policy innovation
Which
because
we should.
we
Yeah.
need to innovate the policy. And in my reflections of the future policy, I think I see more involvement of citizens in policy shaping because who can give you the feedback on impact of AI? It's not going to be an expert at university or in a lab. So I think it should be a sort of collective intelligence collected from many citizens. And I think that with this, we can better shape and faster shape the policies. We can do this policy experimentation, and we can involve people in this policy making. So I think that as a first step, I think it is very good before, maybe in 3 years or 4 years, if we understand better how to involve the citizens, that can be already there and serve also the purpose not only of awareness raising and the manifesto which you mentioned, etc., but also as a part of deliberative democracy and innovation of policymaking, because I think that's the only way I see right now how we should innovate the democracy if we want to keep it.
If we want to keep it. And that's a big, that's we can almost like finish with that because that's the crossroad we're at, I think.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if we democracy, if we want to keep it, education, if we want it to be useful, education, knowing that what worked for the Victorian system doesn't work anymore and is not going to work anymore. And that we're increasingly, we're either on the path to becoming cyborgs, maybe, or maybe going back to helping people understand that getting away from your screen and having a real conversation with a real human being is also a way of learning important things in life, I think. Vladimir, thanks very much, for your time.